Hello everyone. I was just tuning in a bit of music here just to set the mood. But how's it going? I can see a couple of folks there. Feel free to invite your friends and anyone you're looking forward to speak at events with, because you got me right here. The topic for today is all about your guide to creating talks and CFPs. So I'm sure this is going to be a very interesting one, and I can't wait to know more about this topic and hear from our guest speaker today. But even before jumping on to the actual topic of discussion, I see you folks are joining in from different parts of the world. So feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, who you are, where you're joining in from, and maybe just say hi. Uh, this stream is going to be super interesting one. I'm very much looking forward to this, especially the conference season just passed by. We had an opportunity to be at so many conferences this year, and I can't say enough about how 2024 is going to look like. So, super excited for that. But yeah, keep that chat coming. I'm looking forward to all of your responses there, and any questions at any point in time of this live stream, feel free to bring that up and would love to answer those. Awesome. Having said that, let me quickly invite Shivay on the stage, our guest speaker for today. And here we have him. Hello, Shivay. How's it going?
Hey Siddharth, really happy to be here, and thanks for inviting me for this amazing session that's going to be around CFPs and talks. Of course, like we'll be diving deeper into it, but yeah, super excited to be on screen again with you. I've enjoyed it in the past, and first time in with Storyblok. So thanks to Storyblok as well.
Absolutely. Like I personally have had amazing time whenever we both are on the live stream, and most of the time I've loved hosting you, honestly, because the experience that you bring in is invaluable, and I personally love how you deliver that at the same time. So quite looking forward to this one. But
Absolutely.
honestly, when I was thinking or crafting the ideas for community chats at Storyblock, one thing we really wanted to bring up was a guide to creating talks in CFPs, because so many conferences around. It's the CFP season when it comes. It's like kind of an overwhelming thing for many of the speakers, because there's just so much happening and they really need to craft it well. There are so many applications out there, how to stand out, and so many other questions.
Yeah.
I wanted to take this time to just answer all of those, and I couldn't look for any other speaker than you for this particular domain, because I've seen you speaking at so many conferences, not just from India, but across the globe. And I think that is incredible. The effort you put in crafting new talks, CFPs, and so much more is like super amazing. So, thank you so much for accepting the invite and joining us for this one.
No, no. I mean, I'm super excited to share my knowledge. Of course, as you kind of very rightly mentioned, over the past 2 years, it's been pretty crazy, and the amount of talks, and I feel very honored. Like through, and I want to thank all these different opportunities that come my way. Right. Of course, by no means I am the world's best at what I do, but at the same time, I think like it's very important, as we kind of covered today, that how you yourself can bring a unique perspective to a certain technology or to some kind of a product that you have built. And of course, if a conference is accepting your CFP or your proposal, and of course we'll be discussing deeper into all these different technical jargons. You I mean, the reason that they're kind of inviting you is that they find there is potential in your presentation, and the intended audience at
Mhm.
that particular conference will benefit from it, right? So yeah, I mean, super excited to share all this knowledge with everyone, and hopefully people are able to get inspired and start applying, because there are so many times, like with everything in tech, people feel scared that are they worthy enough, right? Like this FOMO, all of these different things come to your mind. So I hope like with today's session, all these go away and people apply without worrying too much about, oh, should I apply, or starting to procrastinate. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so well said. And yeah, I think we can already get started. I see a couple of folks there. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. Hi, Richard. Richard is one of our ambassadors at Storyblock. Thank you for stopping by. He says Storyblock green colored t-shirts. I think you match with the theme color of Storyblock, Shiva.
Oh yeah. Actually, this is not green. This is, I would say, cyan.
Teal.
You know.
Yeah, teal cyan color.
Yeah, yeah, teal. Yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah, I love it. Thank you so much. And I see Vikash is joining from Varanasi. Fantastic. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Vikas is a good friend. Huge shout out to
Oh,
him as well.
awesome.
Awesome.
Cool. Fantastic. Then I think we can get started. And the best way to start is to have your introduction, Shive. I personally know you. You have been doing a lot of other things, and we have been connected, I don't know, for almost 4 5 years now,
Yeah.
and it has been incredible knowing you. But our audience would love to know more about uh, who you are, a bit of your experience in creating talks and participating in the CFP process.
Sure, sure, absolutely. So, hi, I'm Shivay. I started my journey as a software engineer, and the past couple of years now, close to 2 years, I've been working as a developer relations engineer, uh, working with companies like Millisearch. So it's been pretty awesome to just be in that particular space of uh, having to interact with so many great folks, and that kind of inspired me to get into this entire concept of like giving talks and all. So of course, primarily my areas of interest, or the areas where I really focus a lot, are in the space of machine learning in JavaScript with TensorFlow.js, WebAssembly, MLOps. So these are primarily some of the areas where I kind of usually spend my day-to-day time. Of course, a lot of the time is also going into contributing a lot of different open source projects, building some demos, integrations. So that's first of all, like, just want to kind of point out what are some of the key technical areas where I like to focus on. And of course, I kind of started giving my first ever talk was actually at a meetup back in college, when I was in college. But at that time, I was not very aware of this entire like call for proposal thing. I mean, so just one of my friends invited me that, hey, like, we are conducting this local meetup in Delhi. It is from the Pi Data Delhi community, which I eventually then became a lead member of that particular
Mhm.
meetup group. So they just said that, hey, we have a meetup. Do you wish to speak about your experience building a hackathon project that eventually won the first prize? And that was in fact my first ever hackathon itself. So I ended up like presenting my demonstration that I the demo I prepared at the hackathon. And from there I got to actually know about that, hey, like, there's this entire worldwide set of conferences that take place all the world. During that year, I attended my first ever conference in person, international conference in person, which is the Open Source Summit by Linux Foundation in Lyon, in France, in 2019. So that is the first time I got to know that, hey, this concept of like CFP. So you start to kind of apply for it. So it is back in 2019 when I started to then apply for talks. Of course, 2020 was there, so all the in-person ones got cancelled. But I really focused a lot on giving a number of like virtual presentations in 2020, 2021. And then since 2022, I've presented uh, in more than like 14, 15 countries now. This year itself, I've given close to 20 in-person talks. So yeah, on again, like, mostly the topics that range are anywhere from WebML to WebAssembly, MLOps. So those are the areas that I kind of focus on. So yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic, as we call it, as a journey itself, because uh, even I got to know more about you, I think, through hackathons
Through
itself.
hackathons.
When you started participating in hackathons, we met at a hackathon where I think we both were mentoring
Yeah.
or something, and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
how I got connected with Shiva, everyone. And I think I personally have seen how you have grown through speaking from meetups to online events to all these big conferences that you have been to.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm super excited to unveil all of this journey with different points that we will curate in this particular live stream. Uh, Again, when it comes to creating a talk or filling out a CFP, there are multiple ways. There are multiple kinds of CFPs. But according to you, what are those key elements of a successful and engaging talk? Because many times we think that what should we include in the CFP?
Yeah.
What is that one or two or three things or multiple, that can help me curate a good one or a successful talk? Or how do you go about creating a compelling narrative
Narrative. Yeah.
while submitting a CFP?
Absolutely. So I would say, like, first, it's good for the audience to just know that what exactly is a CFP, what exactly is a conference at the first time, because a lot of people, might not be aware. So a conference is this one. event where a group of folks or a company might be organizing it, or an organization might be organizing it, where a group of folks with a collective mindset. And again, conferences is not something that's just limited to like tech conferences. Every major industry, like there will be a lot of like medical conferences as well, right? So of course, specifically focusing on like technical conferences, you have like different types of technical conferences. They could be as simple as one simple meetup of machine learning engineers just talking about machine learning, or it could be a very huge general purpose software conference, or even some of
Hmm.
the bigger events like Google I/O, or Facebook F8 conference, or Apple's Apple events that take place, right? So all these are also like
Yeah.
technical conferences. So they come in different flavors, but of course the main objective is to discuss about a certain technology or a set of different technologies, and you'll find people with different kind of backgrounds, people who have built that technology or who are end users of that particular technology, all coming together and having discussions. And of course there's this entire complete other concept of research conferences. So today we'll be not focusing on like research conferences, but more focuses on like application focused or software engineering focused conferences, right? Because for uh, generally for your research conferences you have to write your research papers. So
Hmm.
for that
Yeah.
also you write a abstract, but that abstract is a bit different. So our focus will mainly be focused on like software, like core software engineering, or like core engineering focused, and not really focused too much on research. So and of course, like whenever any conference is curating their program, they of course like the program committee, which is basically a set of folks who are drafting together what the overall program would look like. In most cases, they will have a certain set of talks with certain themes around these particular talks that they want to have as the final set of presentations that they want to include in the program. So there are two ways. Either they could just reach out to well-known folks and just invite them, or the second way is that they often open up something known as call for proposals, call for
Hmm.
speakers, CFP for short, or CFS, which essentially invites people to come and share what kind of topics would they like to present. So
Yeah.
it will generally be a Google form, or you might want to use a platform, or the conference might use a platform like sessionize.com, papercall.io, or such
Hmm.
kind of other different uh, portals, where essentially what you have to do is, as a potential speaker, you basically share three main things. One is the title of the talk you wish to present, then the abstract. So abstract primarily contains, okay, like what exactly will your talk contain. And of course
Yeah.
we'll just discuss some best practices when it comes to curating a good and compelling CFP. So you have your title, you have the abstract, and abstract primarily contains the description of what you intend to present, and what are
Hmm.
some of the benefits that the audience might get. So these are typically the two main pieces that are usually asked, but sometimes there might be some additional questions that might be asked, such as what are the benefits to the audience.
Hmm.
Um, Sometimes like abstract is like a shorter format for some conferences, like typically not more than 50 to 100 words. And
Hmm.
some conferences might ask you for a lot more in-depth description, like 1,000 1,500 words description of what your talk might will be, and just like asking you a breakdown of how will you structure your talk. So it kind of
Hmm.
depends from different conferences will ask different set of questions, but one thing that's mostly common is your title and your abstract. So those are pretty much you can expect any at any conference when you're filling out this call for proposal, right? So now, of course, that's kind of the background of what exactly is a CFP, what is a call for proposal, and what are these conferences which are kind of accepting these call for proposals. So I think, Siddharth, it's a good time. Then we can kind of move on into some of the best practices, right? I guess
Yeah, I
we can
think
set the context.
absolutely, like thank you so much for setting the context at first place with respect to the conference in general, because
Yeah.
yeah, I understand not many people might be aware of what CFP process looks like, and that is where we can jump on to the next part. Because of course, conferences do open things like CFP for all the speakers, and you have already mentioned platforms like Sessionize and others. Uh, it's like also very crucial many times to just keep an eye on platforms like these,
Yeah.
right? Because many a times they go through those platforms just to announce the CFP, the timeline, the deadline, the requirements, and every sort of things. So, for all of those unfamiliar, would you like to elaborate more on how does the CFP process, like what does the CFP process involve actually,
Yeah.
or any tips you want to give them for submitting good proposals?
Absolutely, yeah. So first, just look at the process overall, and then when it comes to actually filing out or filling out your CFP, what are some of the things
Hmm.
that you should keep in mind, right? So the proposal format or the process kind of looks like that. Of course, this conference they will finalize the date of the conference, and then usually 4 to 5 months, or even sometimes 6 to 7 months before the conference, they will
Yeah,
open up a Google form or they will announce the CFP, and the CFP typically runs anywhere from 6 to 7 months before the conference until, like, let's say 2 to 3 months or 4 months prior. Again, that kind of depends from conference to conference. So you
correct.
typically have a window of like probably 2 to 3 months in which you have to kind of fill your proposal. So you will often see the opening date and the closing date, so you have to
Hmm.
basically fill a talk proposal between this time. So of course, as I mentioned, that when the proposal opens up, you can go to the platform. So if they have a Google form, you can look at the Google form, or if they have a platform of choice that they use like Sessionize, you have to register yourself on that particular platform and
Yeah.
visit the CFP page or the call for proposal page for that particular conference. So as I mentioned, right, that primarily the CFP is a way for you to kind of demonstrate what exactly do you intend to present.
Hmm.
Now, like, let's take out the overall CFP thing and conferences outside, right? Like, just focus on generally, like, let's say you work on, you're just starting your journey into Python development, and you started to learn Python. And of course, initially all of us kind of struggle with whenever we are learning a new technology, and you figured out that there are certain tips that you would like to give to beginners, uh, which you found during your journey that were very helpful for you, that enabled you to become better at learning Python, and you wish to
Hmm.
share that with anyone. So what would be the audience that you'd be looking at? Of course, you not, go to a professional uh, Python developer with 10, 20 years of experience. You'll basically
Yeah.
look out for some beginners, right? Probably first year students at your university, or probably if you're a working professional, there might be a certain set of developers who have never interacted with Python, and they're about to start to work on a Python project. So you kind of give them tips that, hey, like, these are some of the things or best practices that you should follow in order to become a better Python developer, right?
Yeah,
So
true.
it's very important to understand that what is the intended audience or the targeted audience for what you wish to present, right?
Hmm.
uh, because of course you might have certain ideas, and of course based on your experience, you want to share that. So typically, like, first of all, like, let's understand that what a talk can be.
Hmm.
So a conference talk can be an introduction to a technical concept. So it could be introduction to just Python, like a Python 101 could be a conference talk. It could be related to some kind of a application that you have built. So, like,
Hmm.
let's say if you are an open source maintainer and you have built a new open source project that has gained a lot of traction, and you want to just talk about that particular open source project. It could be about an experience where you have done some kind of an internship, or you have contributed to a particular project, so you talk about that. It could be a in-depth technical discussion on some programming concept that you wish to cover, right?
Yeah.
So for example, it could be that how does WebRTC in Python work. Now, because WebRTC in Python is not, I would say, as straightforward as implementing it in JavaScript. So there are some technical nuances that that you need to know. And let's say
Hmm.
that you have exclusively worked on WebRTC implementation in Python at your company, and you wish to share best practices with people, right? So your topic can be anything, but what's important is that when you apply to a certain conference, just do certain background uh, check, or at least get to know about that particular conference a bit. Like, what is the intended or the target audience for that particular conference. And again, I'm specifically saying this to do all these steps even before like drafting your proposal, is because
Hmm.
all the background knowledge will be relevant when you start to draft a proposal for a conference. So I think, like Siddharth, I think it's fairly important to talk about doing
Correct.
that background research, right? It's similar to
True.
how, like, when you apply for a hackathon idea, that you do a bit of background research on the kind of, you know, project you want to build, right? You don't just simply blindly start building a particular project without doing some background research. You have to put in that effort.
Yeah.
So first, just do a background research on what that conference is all about. So let's give an example, right? We'll give you very concrete examples as well. So let's say you're going to give a talk at JSConf. JSConf is a worldwide set of conferences around JavaScript. So of course, that means that you'll have to present a JavaScript concept. So again, it could be either a concept that you want to teach within JavaScript. It could be like a project that you build. Perhaps it could be an open source project that you contribute to that's within JavaScript. Or like, let's say if you're working at a company, you adopted a certain technology like Mern Stack. So how did you implement Mern Stack at your company? What are the
Yeah.
do's and do nots? How do you use JavaScript in production? So talk can be about anything, right? Related to the JavaScript ecosystem. It could be you explaining a particular concept, or how you end up becoming an end user of that particular technology, right? So if like, let's say if Siddharth is drafting a talk on Storyblock, right? It could be that how a certain company, like X company, implemented Storyblock in production. Or it could also be a more hands-on kind of a talk where how did I implement Storyblock with Hydrogen. I know one of your developer advocates, I forgot her name, I'm so sorry. She is
Alexa.
Alexa, yes. She does a lot of work on Hydrogen framework. So you'll see her literally at every single React conference talking about how she uses, CMS platform like Storyblock with Hydrogen as a platform, or with Remix, like, let's say. So like these are different types of topics you can kind of choose, right? So depending on whatever work you're doing, right? Like, let's say if you wish to present a talk that goes deep into the internal workings of the JavaScript V8 engine, or it could be that how my company adopted, like, let's say, Mern Stack in production and scaled it up for millions of users, right? So your
Yeah.
talk can be literally anything out of these. Or it could be, if you're a student, that how as a student developer I started my first ever contribution to the Node.js repository. So it's whenever you're kind of drafting together a conference talk idea, you can give a talk on anything that you want. Now, of course, when you're looking at which particular conference you wish to give the talk at, there are a few things that you should keep in mind. One thing that you should always do is look at the conference at which you're like about to give a talk. They usually give some guidelines on what do they expect as the proposals. So typically they will give you certain either themes. So for example, if it's a general purpose conference like a software engineering conference, they'll have different themes like web dev, machine learning, AIML, cloud, right? UI UX, or like, let's say, mobile development. Or if it's like a specific conference like JavaScript conference like JSConf, they'll give you different areas that the conference will focus on. So like, let's say in JSConf India, this time the focus, a lot of focus was on AI in JavaScript. It was around concurrency in JavaScript, right? It is around like how people are hacking with JavaScript, how people are using JavaScript in production.
Hmm.
So always do a bit of background in research into what the conference is requesting for. So there will be different themes. See if your conference talk matches the theme of that particular conference.
Correct.
And then that is when you will basically decide to you'll start to curate your CFP process. Siddharth, by the way, like, feel free to let me know if at any point in time you want to add anything to like what we have already covered. But if you want to probably add to this, otherwise I think like we can start to focus on the main aspect of like what exactly is the CFP process all about, and what are the things you should add to a CFP.
No, I think I personally feel you already covered a couple of points there,
Yeah.
and you're also kind of answering the question that I have for you next, which is how you stand out
Yeah.
while writing a CFP. So all of these points are, I think, really valuable. And also for all the folks in the chat, I see those questions are also answered, because uh, when they mention about how to choose a topic or how to consider selecting the right topic
Exactly.
related to that technology conference or the
Yeah.
community conference that is happening. So I think that was also answered.
Yeah.
uh, I believe when it comes to the CFA process, when you mentioned about the background check, doing your own research is quite very important, because I personally might have my own topic that I really want to speak of, but that is totally irrelevant to the kind of conferences I'm applying that talk for, right?
Exactly.
Uh, and understanding the history of the event, what previous talks have been already delivered, what is the level of the conference, and also one more essential point that I would really like to highlight is that in the CFA process, there's an option for you to select the length of your talk. Whether it's a lightning talk, whether it's a workshop, whether it's a, let's say, more than an hour thing,
Yeah.
and accordingly they have different slots for you and different availability.
Yeah.
uh, I also see one more question here, which is by Manik, and he says that how do you understand if they include travel expenses for you or not, or is that the case that you need to do it by yourself? So I
Yeah.
think it's, if I just say like a quick thing, because it's like quite straightforward. But Shiva, if you would like to add anything, feel free to, because it's like many times the conference organizers do add it clearly in the CFE process that if whether they'll be able to cover the expenses or not.
Mhm.
But I'm sure you'll have more points to add here, so feel free to.
Yeah. So generally, whenever you're about to submit a CFP proposal, let's say if the conference organizers have not included any information around this, I think it's always good. And I would like to also add upon this, like it's always a good practice to ask the conference
Yeah,
beforehand. And also, I mean, if you wish to, like, let's say you have a very unique idea that you wish to present, and you're a bit confused that okay, like, does this fit the theme of the conference or not, you're kind of in two minds. It's always fine to just email your idea to the conference organizer. Now if they have time, they'll be more than happy to give you feedback, because generally what happens is that the conference organizers are not always the people who are reviewing all these proposals. They have generally a program committee. Certain conferences organizers might be the program committee members. For some, they hire or they have like a dedicated like set of folks, so they can always like share your topic and relay back the feedback. You may or may not receive feedback, but I mean it's worth at least trying out to at
yeah,
least know that yes, whether you should spend time, because like see, crafting a proposal like a CFP does take time. It's not like you randomly think about an idea and you like you just submit something. So of course I think like that gives us a good cue to kind of now talk about what are the main aspects of a CFP, right? So as I mentioned, like see what exactly CFP is. um, CFP essentially tells the audience that this is what the conference talk will be about, right? It will be a
yeah,
description of what you intend to present. And the most important thing for from an audience perspective is that why should they attend your talk. So
yeah,
your proposal should always include benefits that the audience will get, and what is the intended audience for your particular presentation, right? Those are the two things that should be there. So there's this golden rule that I'll always like to follow, and I've kind of like uh, every single successful conference speaker that which I can say, there are some people who are serial conference speakers, uh, speaking like, and one big shout out that I like to give out is to Tejas Kumar. So Tejas is at like literally every single JavaScript or React conference. You'll find him everywhere. If you are in that ecosystem, you'll know the name Tejas Kumar. So I spoke with him. I spoke with a lot of other folks, and like there's this one golden rule that of course not it will not, it might not apply to every conference, but you should definitely always include. So there is the three major components that your abstract or of your CFP should always have, right? So abstract is basically what essentially tells what your conference talk is all about. So the three main things that you should have is a what is the problem that you're trying to solve, right? So first of all, like describing like what is the problem that you're trying to solve. Second is how do you intend to solve that particular problem for a particular specific intended audience, right? And what are the some major takeaways that the audience will get out of your talk? So those are the three major things that should always be there in your talk. And the way that you kind of structure your particular talk is that you should always start with some kind of an innovative thought process, or some kind of a unique uh, point that can essentially serve as a hook, so that as soon as people read that first line of your presentation or of your abstract, they immediately like are able to connect with it, right? So it could be a fun statement, it could be a very informative statement. So I like to give one example, right? So let's say you're drafting together a proposal talk for how can you do machine learning in JavaScript, how do you leverage machine learning in JavaScript. So one example of a proposal could be, hey, this talk will present how can you implement machine learning in JavaScript. You will learn about how to implement open source libraries in JavaScript so that you can build JavaScript projects. Now, how does that sound? It sounds okay, right? It sounds I mean, you get to know that yes, there's this entire thing of like machine learning in JavaScript, but I guess like the first question would be why? Like, why do you do this? So now you could probably add to this context that a typically like Python developers are the ones who are using machine learning. So generally or historically, JavaScript developers would have to interact with Python developers in order to bring in models to directly be supported with JavaScript with the help of like a Python framework like Django, or with Flask. But now it is actually possible to write your own models directly in JavaScript with the help of libraries like TensorFlow.js, or you could use OpenAI libraries, or APIs like OpenAI or Replicate. So I mean, that now perhaps answers that one particular question, that why should I care about this particular talk? Now, you could try to make it even more interesting by giving some facts, right? Because facts and numbers play a very important role. So, you could basically start that, did you know that according to Stack Overflow surveys, more than 50 to 60% of, or the most popular programming language today that exists is JavaScript. And if you look at another huge stat, which is that let's say when it comes to machine learning development, the most popular languages are Python or R, right? So essentially what I'm just trying to say is that it's important to always include some kind of a statement that really put forward strongly whatever topic you're trying to present. And then every particular abstract should at least have these three main things, as I covered. One is the problem that you're trying to solve. So in this case, in this example of this proposal, I said that in JavaScript, machine learning, like JavaScript is not very mathematically compute intensive, right? As compared to other languages like Python or C++. So essentially what we're trying to say is that if you are a JavaScript developer and you want to implement a machine learning algorithm or a machine learning application inside of your JavaScript application, how would you do that? So that's the first thing that you're addressing. That in this talk, we are specifically trying to tackle the issue of how to implement machine learning models in JavaScript. And then, of course, you describe what's the target audience. So in this case, it's mostly a kind of catering to JavaScript developers who are not having, let's say, particularly a background in Python, right? And you don't want them to learn additional language stacks in order to contribute, or in order to basically include machine learning models in their application. So a, you would describe what the problem you're trying to solve, what's the intended audience, and then finally what are the major takeaways that the audience will have from, or the benefits to the audience. Because ultimately the reason, like the only reason why someone might want to come to your talk is a, they find it very interesting, or they find they find a compelling reason to come to your talk so that they can benefit from it, right? Because understand, like of course you're giving your own time trying to talk about something, and why the audience will come to you is that so that they can benefit from it. So it's very important to highlight that
Yeah.
what are the biggest benefits that you get, right? So I like to just probably take one such example, and perhaps Siddharth, I can share my screen to give one such compelling example, right? So
Yeah,
this is
sure.
one of the talks that I basically ended up giving at least 5 to 6 different times within this particular year. It is around that particular JavaScript example. So just see like how I kind of structured my entire talk, and I have basically divided into three main parts. First one is I started with a compelling reason why one should like, so that anyone who looks at my proposal immediately opens their eyes and they are like intrigued. So it says that, have you ever questioned whether JavaScript is a viable option or an alternative to Python or R for creating machine learning models? And then I give a very solid survey that, hey, like JavaScript is the most popular programming language of choice. Now, given the fact that neural networks require a lot of computational power, which of course JavaScript cannot intend like generally of course handle. So this is I'm describing the problem that, hey, yes, JavaScript is the most popular language, but it is not optimized for machine learning. So how do you solve that? Then I come on to the problem that, hey, you can use open source libraries like Onyx or TensorFlow.js to help you. And then I give a like the major takeaway, that what is the takeaway or what is the benefit, right? Which is that how front end developers or React developers can use these libraries or APIs from all these different other sources in order to build machine learning models. So again, like this is, I will not say like by any means that this is the best example of a proposal, but I hope that kind of sets the context that whenever you're drafting a proposal, it should always be very straightforward in terms of what problem you're trying to solve and what are the major takeaways or the benefits that the audience gets. Because
Yeah,
see, organizers are organizing these conferences for the end users, right, for the end people. And as I mentioned, that now, of course, this is like the basic structure of what the CFP has to offer. But when it comes to selecting like what particular topic to present, as I mentioned, like doing that background research on the conference itself. Also, another thing could be that you look at, okay, is it a conference that is more focused towards end users? Is it a conference that's more focused toward research, or is it a mix and match?
yeah,
Because when it comes to drafting together your proposal, um, whatever content in your proposal that you intend to add is all again based on your intended audience, right? Everything is based on the theme of the conference and the audience of that particular conference. So if you're having an end user talk, perhaps the way that you would structure your talk is, and again, like I like to quote an example over here. Let's say if you're a DevOps engineer, and of course in DevOps observability is a very huge point, right? So like let's say you want to add Prometheus. Now, a lot of companies might just follow the docs of Prometheus, but not everyone talks specifically that what are the key challenges when it comes to integrating Prometheus inside of your DevOps lifecycle in a production environment serving millions of requests.
yeah,
So, I mean, in that case, your end user talk, like you're saying, is that how my company X implemented Prometheus in a production environment and we scaled it up for
yeah,
millions of users. How our observability system scales up for millions of users, right? So, that is a great talk intended towards an audience that works in production. But let's say if there is a certain conference that does not deal a lot with production use cases or end users, it's more focused on, like, let's say, talking generally about the internal workings of a particular technology, then it might not make sense to have that particular talk. So it's important that you look out for appropriate conferences that where you can fit in your topic. But yeah, generally the CFP process kind of looks like this, that you add these details. And of course, some conferences might ask you to also add like a basic structure of what your talk structure would be. So there you kind of give a breakdown that these are the major components. You'll start with an introduction. You'll first give some kind of a background information on what your talk is all about, give some starting tidbits about how this will be beneficial for the audience, and then you
yeah,
dive deeper into what the contents of the talk are, what are the benefits, and finally always leave with something that the audience can then follow up on. Like it could be something that the audience can explore. So those are the various aspects of like choosing the right kind of topic, choosing where to present the conference talk, and then like what should be there inside of your proposal.
yeah. And I think I you covered it brilliantly because there were a couple of points which I definitely wanted to cover, and you did cover it. Of course, starting from how to navigate the CFE process, what things to include, how to consider, having that flow, or how to have that narrative which stands out. And also, because there are so many applications, these couple of points I'm sure would be very much valuable while drafting that first CFP.
Exactly.
And I believe you also mentioned about the audience, how to cater your talks or submissions, which can help not just you yourself, but also the organizer when they are selecting to choose the right talks or right content which resonates with the, let's say, conference theme
Yeah.
or all the audience that they are focusing on at first place. I think that also helps you to stand out, because you mentioned the point benefits.
Yeah.
How does this benefit your audience? I think those points are really very important, and thank you so much for sharing that.
And what I'll
I
suggest is also like
Mhm.
just a couple of points, Siddharth. So one thing also is that always be precise or be concise. I'm not precise and concise. Yeah, be concise in what you want to present, because abstract will generally be anywhere from like 100 words to 1,000 words maximum. So don't just beat around the bush. Like be very straightforward. Like be specific, right? About, and again, the most important piece, right? And this can be a bit challenging, especially if you are new to this entire process, is try to establish that the challenge or a problem, right? So basically,
Yeah,
of course, your talk could be or should be something that interests you. It could be a problem you have faced or you have helped someone with, and it doesn't matter like if you have managed to solve the problem or not, right? It could just be your experience around that particular problem, and how
yeah,
what are the things that you have learned from it. Because of course there are certain talks giving at conferences which also talk about failure. Now one might think that, hey, writing about failure about something, does it even make sense? Why would someone want to hear? I mean, there are people who want to hear, because people are able to learn so much from a failure story. So it's, I mean, you can rarely talk about everything, right? So again, it could also be like, let's say, widespread opinion that you might disagree on. It could be a
yeah,
tool that helped you. It could be something you wished you had known when you had started, right? So people do like hearing stories, right? So definitely go for it. And
yeah,
what I'll suggest is that you can always again, especially if you're a beginner, right? Don't fear asking someone to give their opinion. Like I give a lot of, like I help a lot of folks, they directly reach out to me on Twitter, where I am giving them feedback. I think like Sophia, I have been working with her recently to kind of give her feedback about a couple of topics that she's presenting. So I mean, feel free to reach out to folks, and ask for like feedback. Ask for
Mhm.
feedback potentially from conference organizers. They may or may not give feedback, but it's always like fine to ask, right? So just be open to, be receptive to feedback. And if, like, let's say if your proposal does not get selected for some reason, right? Again, proposal submission can be very competitive. At times you might have, like, let's say 1,500 submissions, and there are only 50 talks that will get selected. And even in that, we have to be like, in most cases, you have to maintain a diverse set of candidates, right? So there have to be diversity. There has to be like talks from different domains in different themes. So generally, like, let's say if you're submitting a topic on a particular topic, it might just be that there are 200, 300 potential applications and only 2 or 3 slots. So it's
yeah,
sometimes very hard, very competitive at times, right? So don't get disheartened, right? And just ask for continuous feedback. And again, do a background research on what conference you're applying to, and read the proposals that people have submitted over the years. Because see, people whose talks have been selected, right? um, those are the ones that the conference organizers felt that, yeah, these are strong topics. So you can also learn a lot from just reading other people's abstract. So look at all the previous years of those particular conference. Try to see if the schedule is still up, if you can see the topics. You can read the abstract, and you'll see how they very meticulously they relate the problem. Because
yeah,
the more you're able to relate your abstract, the more your abstract is able to relate to the problem, the better it will resonate with the audience, right?
yeah,
So this does not come in the first time. Like I'll give a very honest feedback, right? I told that I give talks at 20 different conferences here. I applied to almost like 100, and I got selected in only 20, right? So last year this ratio was even worse. So don't get bogged down by rejection, but at the same time try to see how you can how you can become better at applying. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that is so true because whenever it comes to CFPs getting rejected, I think rejections are part of the process. And as you mentioned, I've been seeing that as well when you once shared about, the number of CFPs you have been rejected through.
Yeah.
Uh, and rightly mentioned, I think it's very important to complete that feedback loop. Not everyone is going to be accepted. There are so many applications that are coming. Not every one of them is relevant to the topic. Your talk can be amazing. It can be totally out of the box, but it's just not relevant for the organizers.
Yeah.
It might not work for this conference, but it might work for some other. And it's really very important to keep crafting it, keep on improvising it. And what you mentioned, Shiva, going through the other abstracts and talk is something that I usually do a lot.
Hmm.
Uh, Whether I'm applying or not to the conferences, I have this habit of going to the conference agenda page, just reading out the titles at first place, that how creative that could become. What are those hard topics that they are really focusing on? What are those problems that those talks are helping us solve or helping us understand to solve it in a better way? And all these points, I think that helped me learn a lot.
Yeah.
And one more point I would like to highlight here is that many a times there are so many conferences with similar kind of a theme, similar kind of an audience. I personally, especially in India, when I go to conferences, I find a lot of people speaking about topics which have been spoken about in the previous conferences, let's say. um, Maybe one thing which everyone can do here is try to tweak around the topic a little. Try to add something new every time you deliver, maybe the same content, but in a different way.
Yeah.
I think that also helps out in so many ways. But when it comes to all of these things, there's also another approach, because one thing is that I do draft my talk, I do add it as part of the CFP, and I really want to make sure that the reviewer or the program committee or the organizers knows what I really want to speak about. How do you deliver the same? Because one thing is that I do make sure that I convey my message in a very right manner, but
Yeah.
when it comes to delivering the same talk,
Hmm.
uh, what have been mentioned in the CFP, how does having the control on your delivery
Yeah.
influence the CFP process?
So I guess like it's a question intended towards like the language that's used in the CFP, or are you specifically referring to how you're presenting that particular topic when it's like, let's say a CFP gets
The
accepted?
later part. The later part.
So
Yes.
once it gets accepted, right? So
Yes.
yeah, I mean that's the where the fun begins, right? That like let's say that you have given a talk, you have submitted the CFP, so the conference organizers will review all of them and they will select, and let's say that one of your talk proposals gets selected. So I think like again very similar to how you focus specifically on trying to connect with the audience, right? Even through your abstract, you have to focus on how do you connect the problem statement, how do you relate to the problem statement so that the audience can relate with you, and what are some of the key takeaways that the audience will get from your talk. Those are
Yeah.
similar things that you have to now just focus on specifically when you're drafting your talk as well, and when you're about to give it in life. So
Yeah.
of course, I mean, uh, public speaking in itself is probably a separate topic that so that you'll probably have. I'll not go too deep into the nitty gritties of public speaking. I probably am not a probably the correct person to talk specifically about that, but I can at least share my opinion, or how
Of
um,
course.
what really worked out for me, right? And of course, when I gave my first ever talk, I was super nervous. I did not necessarily know how to connect with the audience per se. My original intention when I started to give talks was that, hey, I just want to give this topic, I want to present this topic and get done with it. I did not
Yeah.
care at that time about the audience, right? Of course, I mean, the topic that I wanted to present was supposed to be intended towards the audience, but when you're delivering that particular presentation at that time, my single focus, because I was scared, I didn't have the proper knowledge or the confidence, I I mean, my sole intention was that, okay, I just want to get done with my 15-minute talk and get done with it, right? But it's super important to ensure that even like when you are giving the particular presentation, that you connect with the audience, right? And very similar to how in the CFP process that we kind of covered, you
Hmm.
want to basically ensure that when you deliver the presentation, it is inclusive for everyone. So
Yeah.
what that means is that, similar to how you intended to showcase that what is the problem you're trying to solve, how does your approach solve that particular problem, and like what are the takeaways for the audience, right? So those are
Yeah.
the things that you'll also essentially highlight inside of your talk. So like whenever you are preparing the slides material, always try to be visually clear and have like appealing slides, because see, like your audience will be very diverse, right? So actually, like some of the small things that you might not probably think about is use a large font, use
Yeah.
as little text as much as possible, because otherwise what ends up happening is that half of the audience is focusing on the slides and the text that is there on the slides,
Yeah.
trying to read through it, and they might not focus on what you want to present, right? So always try to have little text, and for that you can try to use speaker notes if you're not very confident initially, right? And of course, initially you might have this habit of reading through the slides. Now, while that is not bad to do, try to look as less as much as on the screen itself, and try
Yeah.
to be more active visually, like interacting with the audience, trying to gauge, how is the audience reacting to your talk, right?
Yeah.
So because like sometimes let's say that if you're going too quickly, or sometimes you might see that, okay, like the audience perhaps losing their interest. It could be due to a number of different factors. They are probably not able to keep up with you, you're probably going a bit too fast. So it's always important to ensure that you focus more on having the engagement with the audience itself, rather than
Yeah.
like looking directly at your slides, because you are ultimately like speaking to the audience and not to the slides, right? So have as little text as possible, like, and try to just make have a better visible contrast so that it becomes easier to read, because ultimately just understand that not everyone will have the same sharpness of their eyes. And I mean, again, just to be inclusive, right? Because we have to be inclusive in tech. Then of course, I think like it's very important to start by giving a storytelling. So see, ultimately, why, like the best way to connect with people is that, see, even if you're giving a technical talk, right? If you're able to attach a personal experience about the talk presentation that you wish to give, people are able to relate to it, right? Because ultimately all of us are, like, all of our lives are built around personal experiences. So if you're able to share some kind of a story behind, or to kind of express the motivation of your talk, that can really grab the attention of the audience, because
True.
this is generally, I would not say if it's scientifically proven, but uh, the audience has the most amount of attention to your talk in the first 5 minutes. And if you're able to crack that, yes, you're able to get the attention of the audience in the first 5 minutes of your talk, that is what matters. Then you're definitely going to have their attention for the rest of the talk. So the way that you start your talk is the most important. So have a very nice start. So it could be some kind of a personal experience, it could be some sort of a attention grabbing way of giving an introduction. So that could also be that, hey, how is the best way that you describe the problem you're trying to solve, right? So
Yeah.
I like to give an example that, let's say, for my talk that I showcase the proposal for, that's machine learning in JavaScript. The way that I usually start my presentation is that, uh, again, I like to give that example of that JavaScript is the most popular language of choice, programming language of choice, right? So I like to generally start with that. Or again, I'll probably start with a meme. I like to probably start with some kind of a personal story that I have experienced in that particular field, so that people are immediately able to understand, and then they're hooked on, right? And then
Yeah.
from there, of course, the way that you deliver the talk is, right. Of course, you'll have your content, and the way that you have described your proposal, like the CFP, you're now just reflecting that in more depth through your presentation.
Yeah.
So You'll start with something like an attention grabbing introduction to your topic. Then you'll give some background information. What are some of the problems that are there? What are the problems that you're trying to solve? How you solve the problem? How others can solve that problem? And what are the key takeaways? So of course, generally this is what the overall structure of the talk would look like, right? But I'd like to really focus on, I think, three main things that you should always keep in mind when you're delivering the topic. So now, of course, this thing that now you have applied your CFP into the actual slides, and like let's say you have a demo. So when you're presenting your talk, always keep in mind that it's important to gauge the interest of the audience and take feedback. So
Mhm.
trying to maintain eye contact with the audience does really help with that. Now you might be shy at times, and it might be intimidating for you to keep uh, eyes with the audience at all times. Then you could probably take breaks in between and just
Yeah.
ask the audience, hey, are you able to follow along? How is everyone doing? Like, and take that live feedback from the audience to understand, like, yes, if the audience is being able to keep up with you, right?
Yeah.
Try to have some memes in between, or try to have some questions in between, because that also does give a breathing time to the audience to understand. And I like to quote, one example. So very recently, I went to this conference called Web Directions in Sydney, and there's this conference talk. There is the ending keynote, and actually there's another talk by Kyle Simpsons. He's one of the godfathers in the world of JavaScript, and he was giving this talk at React Alicante around like the now and the upcoming things in web, and it is a very
Mm.
very deep technical talk. And literally out of nowhere, he finishes one of the aspects of his talk, and he just has this one random cute image of a kitten, and then he says, okay, let's take a breather, enjoy this kitten image, so that the audience now gets some time to take in everything, right? Because at times, if your conference talk is like, let's say, 45 minutes long, and it goes very deep, like let's say you're talking into the internals of how the engine works. So you're basically talking about like parsing, you're talking about ASTs, you're talking about how your original source code is broken down, and all these web workers are working inside of your, again, I mean, I myself still struggle a bit to understand the internal workings of the V8 engine. But you can, like, there can be talks that can be very technically in depth, and at times I would say like it would be difficult for the audience to keep up with it, right? So speak slowly, right? Speak at a pace that the audience is comfortable with, right? Just have that engagement with them while you're delivering the talk, so that they are always looking at, and they are always having your undivided attention. So it's important to take breaks in between, just have certain questions asking to the audience in between, like, hey, it could be like a slido that you bring up in the presentation, or just simple raise of hand, like, hey, how many of you are able to follow along, how many of you use machine learning in JavaScript. Like, I'm just like giving those kind of cues, right? And these really help you to gauge the audience interest, right? And of course, like, very important thing, that the content should always be relevant to the audience, right? The examples that you give inside of your presentations, or even the code samples that you present, like let's say it's a technical demonstration that you're giving, try to always make it more specific to the audience, right? Now of course, at times it might not always be feasible to do that, but at least all the content leading up to the presentation that you're giving, always keep that relevant to the audience. So yeah, I think those are some of the major things that I like to kind of talk about. I know that I went on for a kind of a rant, but uh,
Oh, all good, all good. Thank you so much for sharing all of that.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, great couple of points. All of this is something that I personally also keep in mind, and I've been learning since the beginning. Uh, and yeah, fantastically curated by you, like the flow and everything. So anyone who just missed out on it, please go rewind back this and feel free to check it out
yeah,
later as well. But yeah, I would love to start concluding the live stream as well, considering we are already on time. Uh, I see one important question here, not necessarily with respect to CFPs and talks, but because we are talking about conferences, I would like to highlight it because many times people want to travel to conferences away from their country. How do you, or do you have some quick 2 to 3 tips you would like to give with respect to the scholarship application that people can fill out for?
Absolutely. I mean, so these generally are like three different types of scholarships. It could be a need based, that if you are financially not capable of attending that conference yourself. It could be a diversity conference scholarship. So these are generally for people, like underrepresented sections of tech, where you can apply as if you're a diverse candidate. So if, like, you're a woman in tech, or like or any kind of diverse candidate, you can apply for these scholarships. So I think, like, the most important this piece, that whenever people are who are reviewing these particular scholarships applications, are that a like, why do you wish to attend that particular conference? So just have a very
Yeah.
strong reason for it, and share like what are the benefits that you will get. And I think, like, one thing that always works out pretty well is that always try to specify that how others will be benefiting from your, like, you being able to attend. So you could perhaps mention that, hey, you are part of these local communities, and the entire local community does not have the capability of attending this conference in person. So your attendance, after you come back, you can relay those particular points back to your own community to help others also grow, right? So those are, so,
Yeah.
like, some very strong points. So just try to make it less about yourself, that, hey, like, I will grow. Of course, like, you can always point that, but try to also make it more towards how you can then create an impact, because ultimately, like, the reason why you are going is for your self learning. So it could be that, hey, I would like to build impactful projects, I would like to network with people, to collaborate with them in order to create impact, or I would like to go back and share that same knowledge with my local community to create for the impact. So whenever you bring in the angle of impact, then I would say that, it creates a very positive impact on your application.
Yeah. True. That's absolutely true. And I believe just be on a lookout for all these opportunities. I think
Yeah.
I have found a lot of them on Twitter, also the platforms which I've shared. There are online conference applications, and I think Shiva already mentioned about it that all the conferences usually open the CFP timeline. I think 5, 6, 7 months before the actual date of the conference, so
Hmm.
you have an opportunity to actually look for it. And just in case if you find an application to be closed, save it for the next year.
Yeah.
I think it's not more than 3, 4, 5 months after that day that they are gonna open the applications again. So I think that's how you can keep a track of it as well. But yeah, thank you so much, Shivai. I think we quite talked about a bunch of things in this particular live stream. Of course,
Yeah.
starting from how to have that compelling talk about navigating the right way through all the CFP processes, how to stand out, identifying your audience, platforms we can find and curate our talks at, engaging with the audience, balancing your content and delivery, and so much more.
Yeah.
I believe it was a lot to grasp in, and I think all our audience members have also gained something or the other from this particular live stream. So thank you so much for that. Please, everyone, feel free to connect with Shivay on Twitter. I've seen some kind words from our audience members in the chat as well. Yes, I appreciate all the work Shivay do. I think he's such a great person to connect with, and you can always follow along, reach out to him for any questions. And I think he's very much humble enough to reach out to you at the same time and help you with any of your problems or any of your technical queries as well. But yeah, Shiva, any last conclusion remarks for you
Yeah, I
to
think.
end this with?
Yeah, by the way, Lavish, I'll be coming to Cube Day. I have a talk there. But that would actually, funny enough, that's my last talk of the year. So I'm super excited for that. But yeah, I think, like,
Nice.
the way I'd like to just conclude is, like, we, of course, we spoke about a bunch of different things. I think, like, one particular point that I'd like to still kind of focus on, or just quickly reiterate, is the proposal that you also draft also does depend on, like, the type of talk you're giving. So a
Yeah.
workshop will go a lot in depth. A lightning talk might just want to focus on very small minute thing that you might want to talk about experiences, or just one specific thing, right? So
Yeah.
just understand that what is the format of the talk, what is the intended audience, what are the themes of the conference, look at previous years if that particular conference has been going on for a few years now. Reach out to the program committee or reach out to the organizers if you have any questions, or if you want to get your proposal reviewed. Try to just reach out to folks, read through CFPs, right? And start to draft together. And I would suggest that if you are very in, like if you want to do this like full time and you're willing to like present at a number of different conferences, I would suggest keeping a Notion or some kind of a doc where you can maintain the deadlines of each and every conference talk. You can perhaps contain a separate Notion page or whatever platform you use, where you list the title of your talk, where you have applied for with it, what is the abstract, whether it got accepted or not, what's the feedback that you received about that particular talk. So all of these different things, like managing all of this, will make it a lot easier for you to then apply
Yeah.
and like use that feedback as a loop, as we kind of described. Use that as
Yeah.
a feedback loop to keep on improving your talks. So, and if you're like, let's say, collaborating, because a lot of times we didn't really, I think, focus on this, Siddharth, so I'll probably just take 1 minute on this particular point. Sometimes you might not be giving a presentation alone, you might be collaborating with someone, a panel discussion with you, people, full presentation. So when you're collaborating also with someone using all these tools, so I personally maintain a Notion board. I have like usually three different Notion boards. One Notion board has a calendar of all the upcoming conferences talks and their deadlines. One is a
Yeah.
board where I list, so it's a table where I maintain the title and the abstract and the conferences to which I have applied to it, and whether in each of these, whether it is accepted or not, right? And then if there's feedback, so I'll just also have a section for feedback. And that's how I kind of recycle some of my talks and keep on then adding more talk ideas, as like and then I have a separate tab of just some talks that I was extremely inspired by, a collection of those particular talks and conferences, like, so again, like maintaining a Notion board, if you're doing it on a regular basis, I think like that's a great way to be very efficient about managing your CFP process.
Yeah, absolutely. And one more point just to add here, not just with wherever you're going speaking at events, it's also good practice to save all your past talks, maybe a recording or a link, so that you can showcase it somewhere, maybe a landing page, maybe just a Notion which you can make it public. And this usually helps you share with upcoming conference organizers. Maybe this also helps them understand that your past experience speaking
Exactly.
at events
Yeah.
like this. And I think I've already mentioned some of the platforms where you can find and look for it. For example, papercall.io. Then there's this sessionize.com. You can even save it there and manage it there. So just in case any other organizers uses those platform, you can directly just bring your talk right from there with some changes to it. But yeah, thank you so much, Shiva. That was incredible. Thanks for sharing all these amazing tips and experiences with our audience. Let's catch up soon once we meet.
Absolutely.
But yeah, thank you so much. Take care
Right.
then. Have a good rest of your night and weekend, of course. Enjoy.
Thank you, Sid, and thank you everyone for watching this live.
Awesome. Cool. Fantastic. That was lovely. Thanks to Shivay for that. I think we have already come to the end of this particular live stream. And a couple of things that I would like to share with you all. This is not the end. I think there are so many live streams coming up, and I already have a list of some of them. So next week, Monday, we are doing Code and Chill with Storyblok. It is going to be more technical. We are going to do live coding, and it is all about Laravel and how you can implement Laravel or integrate Laravel with Storyblok. I think it's going to be super fun because Roberto is joining from Storyblok team, and we also have Richard, one of our Storyblok ambassadors. So do not miss out on that. It is happening on the same time, Monday, 9:30 p.m. IST and 6 p.m. CEST. So if you are around, feel free to join us. The very next day on Tuesday, we have one another show, which is Coffee Break, Girl Code Coffee Break, and we have a talk on technical writing. So I think that is also going to be interesting. This is happening on Tuesday, 5 p.m. CEST, if I'm correct. Yes, and not to forget our own Storyblok community chat. The next one will be happening the next Friday. The topic is impact of developer education and training programs. So I think this is also going to be super curious one for me, especially because dev ed and training programs for all the developers out there or in any other program is very crucial for us to upskill ourselves. So we'll be diving more into this topic. But yeah, if you haven't followed us on Twitch, feel free to follow us. It just you'll get reminder for every time we go live. And yeah, thanks for joining. I think that was pretty much from my end as well. I hope to see you in all our upcoming live streams. And if you have anything for me, feel free to send me a DM or just tag me on Storyblok Discord. I think that would be more than enough. But yeah, have a great rest of your weekend, everyone. Take care and bye bye.